I'm Frank Sesno, your host here on Planet Forward. It's my pleasure today to be talking to Tom Friedman, columnist, author, and a guy who spent a lot of time thinking, writing, talking, studying about energy, climate. We've got a number of questions that we got from the Planet Forward community for you, Tom, so let me go right to them if that's okay. All right? First one, you often write and speak about innovation. There's a lot of rhetoric around environmental innovation right now in the private sector, but how can policy be used to spur innovation enough to meet the energy challenges of the 21st century?
Well, policy is the key thing, and I think the most important policy we can put in place to spur innovation is a price on carbon. You know, Frank, I live in Montgomery County, Maryland. When gasoline was $4.50 a gallon, you could not buy a Toyota hybrid Prius in
Had to
Montgomery
wait
County.
months.
Had to wait. They wouldn't even stop taking names.
Yeah.
When gasoline is $2 a gallon, you cannot sell a Toyota hybrid
right.
Prius in Montgomery
So
County.
you're calling for a tax on carbon.
Got to be a tax on carbon.
That's about as popular as, you know, a root canal.
Absolutely. You know,
You're not going to get elected on that.
I could get elected on that. I think you could actually, if you framed it the right way, you could get elected.
How would you frame it?
Well, you got time? Okay, this may take a few minutes, but
Try a quick one.
okay, it's hard, but I think it's a national security issue. I think it's a growth issue. I think it's a huge opportunity issue. And I think the country that imposes those standards on itself the first is going to build the 21st century companies first and have the real export market.
Here's another question from somebody in Chicago. How would you incorporate green jobs into career and technical education in high schools? And are there model programs? In other words, get this in early.
Two ways to do it. One is through shop class. I mean, some green jobs are going to be about installing solar panels on roofs. They're going to be about retrofitting homes. They're going to be about re-insulating homes. So one is at the sort of technical college level. And the other is at the cutting edge science level. You know, green is all about chemistry, biology, and physics. And the more people who specialize in chemistry, biology, and physics are going to bring to the marketplace the skills to push out the boundaries of knowledge so we can lead the green revolution.
Here's an interesting question from one of our staffers here at planetforward.com, Susanna, who wrote, you recently wrote, the only engine big enough to impact Mother Nature is Father Greed,
Right.
Which means the market. How do you ensure that human rights are protected in a market system? And by human rights, we might also talk about environmental rights.
That's what government's for. One thing we learned from the economic crisis we've just been through in this country is what happens when you have a market with too little government. And to me, what the government is there for is to ensure commercial rights, civil rights, human rights against the sort of leviathan of the market. That's what government's for.
Finally, this one from California is the combination, you write a lot about China, and that's what this question is.
Right.
Is a combination of Chinese totalitarian central planning and Chinese entrepreneurialism more productive than democratic processes and a modern regulated market economy? Will China own the last half of the 21st century, this person writes, as the U.S. fades?
Well, it could. It really depends, and that's why in my book I write about the question of China. Maybe we should try to be China for a day, but I really conclude by saying I don't want to be China for a day. I want to be America for today, but that means getting our government to work with the same focus, legitimacy, authority, and stick-to-itiveness through democratic means to launch a real green revolution that China does through authoritarian means. Right now, our government doesn't work that way. It should, it can. We need to demand that it does. But right now, if we stay on the track we're on, China could have an advantage.
You know, it's a really interesting point too, Tom, because, for example, I've been to Brazil and I visited the incredible ethanol mills and the process there. But, you know, they declared this whole program back in the first energy shock under a military government where you could stick with something for 30 years.
Yeah.
Makes me a little nervous about whether we've got the discipline in our system to do it. It's a very interesting question.
I do believe, though, it's a question of leadership and framing. If you frame it the right way for people, get them to think about it the right way, I think Americans are smart enough and I think aspiring enough to get it right.
Last question from me to you. How did Tom Friedman get so interested in energy and climate?
Well, I actually was started at the New York Times as an oil reporter back in 1981. I was in Beirut for UPI and I was covering OPEC at the time. So I actually have been covering energy for a long time. I really got more interested in it, much more after 9/11, as it became a geopolitical issue. How do we basically take away resources from people who've drawn a bullseye on their back? Then came the climate issue arising, and I've always had a great interest in the outdoors. My wife's on the board of Conservation International. It all kind of came together here in the 2000s.
Tom, thanks very much for joining us here at Planet Forward. I hope you'll be part of the community.
Love to. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.